When I had Alex O'Connor in here, he's like, "Have you heard of this chap, Gnostic Informant?"
Yeah,
I'm like,
I saw that. Yeah.
Oh, do I know? I've heard of him.
Yeah. I was excited to see that. It was cool.
It's good to have you here, man. I know this has been a long time in the making.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed your podcast, your first one with Danny Jones when that came out like a year ago.
That was fun.
Very entertaining stuff. Danny's a really good friend of mine. He speaks really highly of you. But, you know, before we get into everything today, there's a lot we can go through between, as you were saying, like 500 BC and 500 AD and all the history you look at, and obviously your backstory. What was this whole thing that came up in the episode I had with Alex? Like, obviously he explained it, but I want to have a chance to air this out in the open, and then we'll let that lie where it is, give everyone their equal time, because obviously you came up. But there was something that happened where my friend Wes Huff put out a video that had something to do with a clip that was going around online of you related to, I think, 4 different gospels and a claim you were making, and then things got mixed up and people had a disagreement. So would you mind just explaining what it was and giving the context?
Yeah, so what happened was I was on Danny Jones's show. He asked me a question about what I think the biggest misconception about the Bible is. And my response is that there's a misconception about the order of the Gospels, and a lot of people don't know that Mark came first. Mark's the oldest. Not everyone. There's different scholars who think Matthew is first. There are some scholars who think Marcion, one of the Gnostic leaders of the church, wrote the first Gospel. I'm still looking into that. I'm not sure if I'm sold on that. But anyways, most scholars think Mark. That's like the consensus is that Mark is the oldest Gospel.
And why do they think that?
Because it's very simple. It's like a very, very shortened version of the other Gospels. The other Gospels seem to be quoting from Mark and citing Mark, and then adding stuff to it. So it looks like it's the simplest, the most. Jesus doesn't have a high Christology. He's not literally called God like he is in John. John, he's basically like is divine. He's the Logos that was there in the beginning with the Father, all that stuff. And Mark, he's just the Son of Man. He's the Messiah, and it's a little bit lower Christology. So that's why people think Mark came first. But the reason why I brought that up to Danny is because in the oldest manuscripts that we have of the Gospel of Mark, it ends abruptly in chapter in the last chapter, when I think it's verse 12, 11 or 2, and then there's 11 more. So it ends up at 21.
So there's like a blank space, basically.
Yeah. And so it ends with the angel telling the women at the tomb, Jesus has risen, and then it just kind of just drops off. And he says like he'll be back later or something, like, whatever.
So it doesn't necessarily say directly like, here's where he went, here's the meaning of it, here's the resurrection itself. Right. It's just like, oh, he's risen, and it's a phrase. Just
like the other Gospels have, he literally comes back, and John, he's physically touched by Thomas, doubting Thomas. He's like, he has to touch the Jesus to see, oh, it's really him in the flesh. Mark doesn't have that. So I thought, when he asked me that question, I thought that's a big misconception, is that when the first time they, if we're going to assume that the scholars are right, that Mark is first, let's go with that and use that as an axiom. The first time that the story about Jesus was told to a wide audience, the author, who we call Mark, for some reason left out probably one of the greatest miracles in Christianity, was that Jesus comes back in the flesh. And that's like a required belief as most Christians, that you have to believe he died and came back in the flesh. Like, that's part of the doctrine, the dogma of Christianity. Mark leaves that out. So I thought that was interesting. And then I pointed out to Danny, 4 centuries go by in the evidence, the manuscript evidence, before we start seeing that longer ending in Mark. So 4th and 5th century, the church manuscripts, you start seeing Mark with the longer ending in it. Now, what happened with Wes Huff is there was a clip going around of that podcast that was highly condensed. So a lot of the nuances were taken out. And it was just
your
me.
podcast with Danny.
Yes, yeah. It was going on Instagram, and in that clip, in defense of Wes Huff, actually, he only saw me saying Jesus never returned, and then in the 5th century they fixed it, and then they added him in. So he thinks I'm saying to people that there was no even in the other Gospels that there was no return. So in his defense, he saw that, and that was a fair assessment of what he saw. But in the original podcast, that's not what I said. I obviously gave the nuances. I told him about the angel And he realized he when he found that out, he actually pulled the video down,
Right.
and he apologized to me about misrepresenting my statement.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
Um,
Great.
and but on top, but then he goes a little bit farther in his video, the one he took down. He actually starts bringing up the manuscripts that I talked about, but he's showing blank. He was saying that at the end of Codex Alexandrinus, Codex Vaticanus, and Codex Sinaiticus, which are the 3 major church gospels manuscripts, he was pointing out that there was gaps at the end, and because of these gaps at the end, it indicates that the scribes knew about this longer ending and left it open just in case another scribe later would come along. The problem with
They
that,
knew about it but didn't write it?
it's all speculation.
Yeah.
It's all just, we're just
You
looking.
can't have proof of that, right?
No. And the reason why I pointed out that I think this is a bad argument is because there are other manuscripts that we can point to that have these gaps at the end, and they don't mean there's no longer ending to those texts. So, and then but the big mistake he made, this was like the big womp mistake that he made, and he's since admitted this too, is he put up Alexandrinus on the screen as one of these manuscripts, and that manuscript has the longer ending in it. So he's throwing this manuscript on the screen and going, "Look at this gap at the end."
Yeah, but he showed it with one that had a gap, right?
He showed it. Yeah, he shows 2 that have the gap without the longer ending.
Yeah.
With a third one on the screen, Alexandrinus, which has the longer ending in the manuscript already, and still has a gap at the end. So it defeats the whole purpose of his argument. If his argument is the gap at the end means the longer ending should have been there but is not. But then you find a manuscript that he mistakenly puts on the screen that does have the longer ending but still has a gap at the end, then your whole argument goes down it's in the garbage now.
Right.
Because you're showing a manuscript of the longer ending that also has a gap. So it made no sense at the end of the day.
For people out there, just to follow along with some things, like there's some stuff I'll have you define today just so that everyone can stay with it. And then obviously there's people who are listening who are very aware of this.
Yeah.
So sorry for some of the going over things. But when you say Codex Sinaiticus, I'm not even going to try with the names.
Yeah.
and all those, what specifically are they? Just so people
Those
understand
are the church manuscripts of the New Testament and Old Testament. Both these ones do. These are like the first official church Bibles that were put together by the church in the 4th and 5th century.
Okay.
Alexandrinus is 5th century, and I think the other 2 are late 4th century. And though that's the name of the Gospels, or that's the name of the manuscripts. I think it's because of where they were produced. I think one of them was produced in Alexandria. That's why it's Alexandrinus, and then the other ones was in Jerusalem, Sinaiticus, and then Vaticanus was in the Vatican. Right. So that's why they have those names. But those are later manuscripts of the church in the 4th and 5th century. And like I said, 2 of those still didn't have the longer ending, even in the 4th century. And then that last one, that Alexandrinus, does have the longer ending. So then, just to say this, just to clarify what I meant by how this is a mistake. If your whole entire argument is, these gaps here signify that the scribe knew that there was more to be written, but then the full ending is already there, then you just defeated your own argument by putting that on the screen.
Right.
So he took the video down, but in his defense, he didn't necessarily misrepresent me as I thought he did. But his only mistake was that at the end was the manuscript thing.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it wasn't like
this is peaceful.
Yeah,
I'd love to see you guys talk.
I would love to talk. Yeah,
and have
I think it's cool.
Not even a debate, but a nice discussion back and forth on interpretations.
I think that's a better way to do things.
100%.
The whole Jay Dyer Ortho Bro debate scene is all about who can make the other person look dumb and gotchas and it's all sophistry. Yeah. I think when people sit down with two opposing ideas, sit down and just talk and just hash everything out without trying to get the other person, the audience learns more and it's more productive.
Yes, I agree.
That's what I want. That's what I think people should be doing.
I agree, man. Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.